evening, everybody from India. Namaskar all over the world. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome all of you to a very distinguished panel today. Our Honorable MP and my senior from college, Jayan Sinha, um, co-founder of Udan, Sujit Kumar, uh, co-founder, director of BuildDesk, Ajay Kaushal, and our moderator, very distinguished alumnus from Roorkee, founder and serial entrepreneur. And today he's running a non-profit accelerator by the name of IIT Startups, Manoj Goyal. Over to you, Manoj.
Thank you, Alok. Good morning, America. Good afternoon, Europe, and Namaste, India. In the next 55 minutes, we'll be going through a distinguished set of entrepreneurs, founders, hear their amazing stories, and also hear from the Honorable Minister about all the policies the government may be making to make sure there is 10 times more unicorns out of India in the next few years. So with that, let me first introduce to you what IIT Startups is all about, which requires maybe 1 minute history of Pan IIT. Pan IIT as an organization was launched in 2003 with the goal of branding the IIT or IITians and networking amongst IITians. The CBS has a show called 60 Minutes that covered IITs, where they interviewed number of students, and it was very well covered. After that, we did a lot of branding. Bill Gates was the first keynote speaker at our inaugural summit, a summit just like today, except it was all in person. Then the US House passed a resolution saying how much IITians have contributed to US economy. Today, if you see, even in this conference, the CEOs of Google and IBM and many other companies are IIT alumni. So in 2018, we started IIT Startups, we meaning a bunch of Pan IIT people who were getting bored. And the goal here was to, how do we pay back Indian taxpayer for the subsidized education that we receive? I remember my fees was 75 rupees, which was given back as scholarship. So zero cost of education. And many of you probably have the same. And the theme here was there is 14,000 IIT alumni just in Silicon Valley. And they see around them all the startups happening. And they say, if that idiot can do it, I can do it. I'm smarter than him or her. So technically, the IITians here are second to none, but they need help in articulating their business value, proposition, and starting their company. That's how the thesis was for IIT Startups. So here's a trivia. IITians are the fourth largest unicorn builders after Stanford, Harvard, UC Berkeley. And if you see there, MIT is missing, many other top colleges are missing. So how do we bring it from fourth largest unicorn builder to the first largest unicorn builder? That's the topic of today. The goals of IIT Startups is to help IITians and India to become the #1 unicorn generator. If we help more IITians succeed, they will create more jobs in India and US, and they will get richer and donate back to IITs, which in return will pay back the Indian taxpayers for the education we got. So what do? We educate, we mentor, we connect, we accelerate using a cohort system, which is a semester of 12 startups going through our workshops, culminating in a convocation or demo day, where we have almost 200 plus investors, VCs, corporate biz dev. We have an ecosystem of almost 75 mentors and coaches, all contributing their time. So far, we have graduated 5 cohorts with 60 startups. One has been acquired by McAfee, and all services are free. We don't take equity, we don't invest. This is out of goodwill back to the younger alumni. Cohort number 6 will start in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It will be all be virtual. So we are now opening the platform to the global audience. So you can, if you're a startup or want to do a startup, you can register and observe our workshops or even participate. And here's the photo of one of our workshop. You can see the attendees there. Most of them are, this is all in San Francisco Bay Area when we were doing physical. Sanjay Panda, who was the consul general here in San Francisco, was delivering a keynote at one of our demo days. So the team, we have a very solid board. Arjun Malhotra, founder HCL or co-founder HCL. Dheeraj Pandey, who is the CEO of Nutanix, another unicorn. Myself, Monishi Sanyal, who was the founder of Pan IIT, or one of the founders of Pan IIT. A chancellor of UC San Diego, Deep Khosla, he's the highest academician in US, the highest ranking academics from any IIT in US. And Rakesh Mathur, who sold his company to Amazon, another solid entrepreneur. We have a solid team of cohort chairs, and these are all people who have sold companies in billions of dollars to Google and Cisco and many, many other companies, plus 75 other coaches and mentors, all giving their time. So please, if you're a startup, do register. If you want to mentor one of our startups, also go register at our website. So with that, let me come back to the panelists. So I'll have each panelist give a quick introduction of their company, what space they are in, the size of the company, if they can share the revenue, sure. If not, just the size of employees, and the last funding valuation. Then we will go through 3 questions. The questions are, does India have enough unicorns? Why doesn't have India enough unicorns? Or how can they get more? And what should the government do in terms of policy and driving this economic engine to have more unicorns? So we'll be the number 1 soon, beating Stanford, Harvard, Berkeley. So with that, let me have Ajay Kaushal tell us about, give us your introduction, Ajay.
Quite an interesting thing around IIT startups. And I think there's some interesting companies when I went and saw your website and things like that. But anyway, thank you for inviting me. And it's indeed a pleasure being here this evening in India and an early morning in the US. My name is Ajay Kaushal. I am one of the co-founders at BuildDesk. You won't believe it. We started BuildDesk on the 1st of January 2000. And we've been at it since then. Interestingly, we run a payment platform. We enable digital payments for all kinds of companies, small to the largest. So whether you look at large businesses like Amazon or Flipkart or any of these guys, they use our platform for payments. And so would insurance companies, mutual funds, government taxes. So our business at BuildDesk is to make available payments as a service to businesses, to governments, to financial institutions. Like I mentioned, all of us started in the year 2000. All of us were consultants before that at Arthur Andersen. We left the firm just before it ran into trouble with Enron. And we've had a fantastic journey since then. Over the years, we've also acquired 3 companies, and we run an interesting business which comprises payments, engagement, and credit analytics fraud. We are a little over 1,000 people across the 3 companies. We have a revenue exceeding $250 million. And the other interesting thing is that we've been a profitable and profitably growing business for the last 15 years. As a company, we have, I would say, fantastic set of shareholders. When we started, 2 of India's largest banks were shareholders, and that 2 public sector banks, which is Bank of Baroda and State Bank of India, and another Indian venture firm called Sidbi Venture Capital. And all 3 of these investors have sold their stake and have moved on. And today we have people like General Atlantic, TA, Temasek, and a venture fund out of LA called March Capital. And recently, about 2.5 years ago, Visa, which is the world's largest payments company, they've also bought a small stake in our business. Our digital payments is doing well right across the world, and so does it in India. And we are, I think, the largest payment platform in the country today. And we've had a great run, and we've been able to see how a lot of other businesses have grown around us, whether it's in the e-commerce space, whether it's in the delivery space or food space. So indeed excited to be part of this event. And just to add, the stint at IIT really helped. Actually, there's another partner, co-founder of mine who's from IIT Mumbai. And we've had a great time. And the entire stay at IIT, I think, helped us get that confidence and that ability to say that this is something that we should be doing. And great to be here, and look forward to the conversations with the other panelists and any other questions that people might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay. Next, I have Jaspreet Singh from Dhruva. Jaspreet, please unmute and give us an introduction of your company.
Morning, good evening, everybody. Jaspreet Singh, co-founder and CEO of Dhruva. It's an enterprise SaaS company for data protection. We sort of protect and manage data across small and large enterprises, from sort of cradle to grave. Size and shape of company, about 1,000 employees, mostly in the enterprise SaaS domain. Revenues sort of north of $100 million, exceeded last year, with investors from Sequoia Capital and many of the firms, Nexus Venture Partners. And most recently, we had a sort of a hedge fund called Viking Capital invest in the company. Last valuation was around about $1 billion. And yeah, just growing and doing the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaspreet. When did you start, Jaspreet?
I started the company in 2008.
2008, so 12 years old. Okay, excellent, excellent. We have Sujit Kumar next.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Manoj. So I have done my graduation from IIT Delhi, passed out in 2003. Being part of the early journey of Flipkart. Since 2008, I was with Flipkart for almost 7.5 years, leading all the operation and category management. Seen the journey from 0 to $15 billion valuation of Flipkart. After that, came out, and in 2016, I started Udan with Vaibhav, again from IIT Delhi, and Amod from IIT Kharagpur. We were colleagues in Flipkart too. And then I started in 2016, Udan journey. It's a B2B commerce platform. So from B2C background, starting B2B, it was a different kind of challenge. So all the hypotheses on which we have seen that journey of Flipkart, I think we have to challenge ourselves. And in India, I can see the consumptions. When I say the B2B, there are around 30 million retailers are in this country, through which all the consumer consumes their daily consumption. So we are built, and overall, around 60 million MSMEs are in this country. Almost around $1 trillion of trades happening in this country and growing. The reality in the country, how to solve the problem in B2B, because given all the infrastructural development, let's say internet penetration in India has happened in the last 5-6 years, and different kind of government reforms like GST, one country, one tax, which gives confidence to solve the supply chain problem. How to solve a lending problem through data and internet. So all those things were the part of the B2B e-commerce, and we have taken that plunge and started our journey. In last 4 years, we have, I think, company is valued around $3 billion. Investors like Speed, DST, Tencent, Altimeter, Football Ventures, Citibank. So we have raised a couple of rounds. Um, we are, as an organization, around more than 25,000 people. And most of it are because we have our own logistic, our supply chain. We call it Uran Express. And then we have our own lending NBFC also. In India, there is non-banking financial corporation regulated by RBI. So put together everything, we have around 25,000 people, and growing fast, though we have seen the one of the toughest period in our journey, the COVID, which halted almost all the movements in the initial phases. We came back strongly after that. In our journey, we are targeting um, we see that this model is very familiar with all the countries which have a similar kind of consumptions, developing countries. If it's Southeast Asia, if you see people are launching like Uran of Bangladesh, Uran of Indonesia, and Uran of lots of other geography. Though we are in the early journey, but lots of ground to cover. We are building strong capability like supply chain, logistic, lending, platform, how marketplace, brand distribution. Yeah, and we believe that's the real e-commerce in going to happen in this country. Strongly growing. Yeah, that's about Uran, Manoj.
Thank you, Sajid. And next we have distinguished Member of Parliament, Jayant Sinha of IIT Delhi. Mr. Sinha, you have
Thank you
been
very
in.
much. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much, Manoj, and wonderful to be with you all this evening from Delhi. I'm very pleased to be on this very distinguished panel. I am IIT Delhi, 1985, Aravali Hostel, Chemical Engineering. And then I went to the US like most other IITians, worked there for many years as a consultant, and then became a venture capitalist where I founded and set up a media network in India. Invested in many companies, including two unicorns, Daily, Hunt, and Quicker. And then, of course, I'm now in public service in my second term as a member of parliament in the Lok Sabha, where currently I chair the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Finance. We've just, in fact, put out a report on startup financing, which I think should result in some more policy action in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. But I will say that over the last 2 decades, I have been involved in the entrepreneurial ecosystem as a consultant, as a venture capitalist, and now as a policymaker. And it has come an extraordinarily long way, as we can see from the terrific companies that we have on this panel today. And thank you, Manoj, for the wonderful work you're doing with IIT startups.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. So next we'll go through a round of questions. My first question, and we'll do in the same order. Ajay Bhardwaj is not here, so we'll start with Ajay Kaushal. Does India have enough unicorns? So just a very short answer, Ajay. Well, more than yes or no, and why not?
I think the shortest answer is we don't have enough I would say startups and unicorns. And while this word unicorn is a very strange thing because unicorns don't exist in the real world. But I think the point which I think the panel is trying to look at is, should we have successful and large businesses coming out of India? And I think the definite need is yes. Given the size and scale of the country, I think we need many more companies which are, I would say, large enough and successful. I think those are two very important things, because I think a largest business has the ability to take these shocks that happen, you can say, whether it's the pandemic recently or any other crisis that happens. So I think it's important that businesses get created. I think it's important that businesses are created in a sustainable manner. I think it's important that the businesses are successful in themselves. That means they should be profitable and growing. And lastly, I think there have to be large businesses which can buy up these small businesses. So either the businesses become large enough and get listed, or the ecosystem should be big enough that these whatever businesses get founded or businesses evolve in the country, there should be somebody who buys these companies out also. Because I think the startup ecosystem needs either the stock market exit or somebody who's buying out these businesses. What I have seen over the last 20 years that we have been in this ecosystem, I think there are not large enough Indian companies to buy out these startups. A lot of startups in India are still bought out by the US corporations and things like that. I think we should have the capability and the capacity of Indian businesses to buy out the startups in India. Also, I think additionally, we should also have the capability of domestic capital to invest into these companies. I mentioned in my opening comments, we had three large Indian institutions who were shareholders. But after the first 5-7 years, they all moved on, and they all moved on profitably. And today, like I said, all our shareholders are large US private equity firms or large US corporations. So I think the Indian corporation also needs to evolve so that they can have the guts to make those payments to these or buy out these companies, because I think the Indian corporation doesn't yet have that, I would say, capacity to buy out these companies. Like if you look at the US or other markets, startups or businesses get bought. So a short answer to your question, we need more startups to come in. They need to grow. And we also need people large enough to buy these companies. I think that's where the cycle of startups coming up, getting bought and sold, and that ecosystem will then grow. So we need that thing to also come into our ethos of buying and paying up for such things.
Excellent. Excellent insight. Jaspreet, you are in California. So let's hear from you. What's your opinion about, are there enough unicorns in India? Would you like to see more? And
yeah, I think of course, echo what Ajay said, right? I think as a definition of success, yes, I mean, it takes only a fool to raise valuation of any company, right? So it's not the valuation itself is not a question. It's just in general the criteria of success for startups, and absolutely yes, I think it's an ecosystem where both entrepreneurship, venture capital, acquirers all have to sort of constantly evolve. I actually have been pleasantly surprised with the quality and caliber of companies coming out lately. Obviously, Druva was one of them early in the days, but I've been pleasantly surprised with who I see both in SaaS, which is the domain I personally play interest in, and also in general, sort of e-commerce and other consumer internet companies coming out of India. Been pleasantly surprised more and more on the quality and quantity of companies. So yes, I think short answer is we need more. And I'm optimistic, and I've seen enough in the recent years to see that it's a pretty good growing trend.
excellent. Thank you, Jaspreet. Let's go to Sujit. You have been through 2 successful companies, or you're on your 2nd successful company. Sujit, what's your opinion?
So I have seen almost, you can say that the first practical startup, which was Flipkart, which was able to raise billions of dollars, got the exit also, and practical exit. So first unicorn, let's say Flipkart has taken almost 6-7 years to almost 5-6 years to become a unicorn. I think in this year itself, if you see in a year, I think almost, if the number is right, around 7 unicorn has been announced. So I think there is a momentum already. I think the quality of the company, quality of founders, quality of the business use case are improving drastically. The question is it enough? Can we do more? I think it's a point of discussion. And I was hearing Ajay, he was saying that, yeah, if the more and more real exit, rather than merger and that, I think the real exit happens, then this momentum will grow faster. I like Flipkart is one of the exits, but I think real exits are like listing the company in Indian market, or let's say like Big Basket has been bought by Indian corporate, like Tata has bought. So I think these events are happening, but yeah, we need more of these kind of incidents for the more and more pace of creating bigger company out of this ecosystem. Yeah, Manoj.
Thank you, Sujit. Let's hear from Mr. Sinha, sitting on the government side, policy making side. What's your opinion, sir?
Let me take a somewhat contrarian view on this. There are, by the latest computations, about 500 unicorns in the world. 200 each about in China and the US. India is about 30, 35. So actually, if you look at it in terms of the size of our GDP versus the size of the US or the Chinese GDP, we are about 1/6, 1/7 the size of the US, 1/5, 1/6 the size of China. So relative to these two leading economies, adjusted for GDP, we're actually doing quite well with respect to the number of unicorns that we have. That's exactly what you would be expecting at this stage in terms of the size of our economy. So we've done a super job, and I think our government should get credit for this, because most of these unicorns, in fact, have been created over the last 5 or 6 years. And in fact, if you look at the venture capital private equity money coming into India over the last few years, it's gone up by a factor of 3 or 4 times relative to the past. So, there's been a tidal wave of venture capital private equity money coming into India over the last few years. And that's obviously driven up valuations and created more and more unicorns. So we are off on a very virtuous cycle. We're doing quite well. And all the policies that, the government has been following, ease of doing business, opening up sector after sector, making it easy to set up AIFs, setting up the India Aspiration Fund of funds to get domestic venture capital. All of these different initiatives have made a huge difference. And of course, the Honorable Prime Minister himself has really, really gone out and encouraged and promoted our startups. And we have a full initiative called Startup India that's going on. And of course, we have the Atal Innovation Mission as well, which is helping our universities and our academic centers do more research and more development. And there's a big startup event coming in January as well. So we as a government have really, really emphasized startups, because like all of you, we all recognize that India's future growth, innovation, solving India's problems, all of that is going to happen through the great companies, the entrepreneurial companies that are being set up. Now, what we need to do going forward is, as we think about a $5 and $10 trillion economy, we need to double, triple the number of unicorns. So we need more capital going into our startups. We need more areas that our startups go after, whether it's agri-tech, whether it's new forms of fintech, whether it is manufacturing for Make in India, the production-linked incentives, and then, of course, healthcare, which is, of course, a great need for the world. And then we've got this looming challenge for the world, which is climate change. And that, again, is an area where in all kinds of green industries, we should have more startups. So relative to the challenges that we face and the growth in the economy that we expect, we have to go from 30 to 35 unicorns to 100 unicorns over the next few years. And for that, and I think this is where the real challenge is, we have to feed the funnel. So we need lots of startups, many, many more startups. And the work you're doing, Manoj, in terms of encouraging people to get companies going and make them professional and scalable is extremely important. So those are the kinds of things we need to focus on: more startups, more research. We do that, we'll get to 100 unicorns, which is exactly what we need to get to a $10 trillion economy.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Yes, we have to feed the funnel, so there'll be more quality companies. So on that, India needs to be on an exponential growth. Exporting tractors will not be growing India economy. So we are looking at these tech companies as an engine. That's the engine we have today. So we desperately need these unicorns to go global leaders, to become global leaders, even go public on NASDAQ market, have liquidity, buy out more companies. So let me ask all the founders here, how are you scaling, or do you have any plans to scale beyond the Indian borders and become global players? So start with Ajay.
Definitely, and I agree with what some of the points which Jayant also mentioned. And over the last few years, there definitely has been a bounce in the system, and that bounce has actually helped a number of people. Even if you would take a business like ours, which is digital payments, over the last 6-7 years, there has been a significant growth, and that also has been fueled in many ways by the kind of, I would say, policy initiatives or steps that the government has taken to formalize the system. And I think the other point, one thing which I mentioned earlier was about exits. The second thing I think in India, which we need to solve for also, is to make sure that the revenue pool widens. we have this, I would say, desire to keep reducing costs. But, somebody's cost is somebody's revenue. And unless or until that virtuous cycle of revenue happens, even only if you have revenue can you have margin or profit. So we need this cycle to happen. And I would think that in India, you can get volumes, you can get the number of customers, but how do you get revenue out of India is a challenge. And for that particular reason, and for that, and also to make sure that you can widen the pool that you have, one needs to step out and one needs to make sure that whatever services and products you have can go to or can be sold in different markets. And from our perspective, we are obviously looking at regional markets to offer payment solutions. But if you look at payments per se, which we run, India is a huge market. And over the last few years, there have been some phenomenal products which have come out of India. And I actually believe that India is the world's most efficient payments market. I don't think money moves faster or cheaper anywhere else in the world that it moves in India. So from that perspective, the market is very large. There is opportunity, but I think we need to have a larger revenue pool, and it's that revenue pool and margin pool which I think necessitates that one goes out of India. And therefore, from our perspective, we definitely need to move out. Given our size and scale here, we process close to $100 billion of payments on the platform. During the current year, we did about $85 billion last year. So we have a fairly scaled up business. And like I said, we've been doing this for a while. And we definitely are looking at expanding into geographies outside where we can grow the business at scale.
Any plans to go public on NASDAQ or New York Exchange?
We are currently more inclined towards going public in India. Actually, we are almost a regulated business in India, and therefore for us it makes more sense to do something in India. And we've had conversations with bankers and friends. India is a fairly, or rather, is a reasonably efficient market, even from a pricing perspective these days. So it's top of our mind, but India is also right there.
Okay. Next is Jaspreet out of USA. Jaspreet, what's your plans to be a global leader?
I think from a market which we play in, which is selling a service or a software to enterprises, I think by default we had to be global by nature. So 2011, when Sequoia Capital funded Druva, I had to move down to the Valley, rebuild the entire team here, and sort of focus on the US as a market. And that's predominantly what our focus still remains. So more than 85% of revenues come from a single country, which is US. India still has, I think from an enterprise SaaS perspective, it's a growing and booming market. We're getting great traction with customers with the sales presence we have. But India, I think from a software buying standpoint, has a few growth years ahead to be mature as a software buying platform. So I think it's important to be global. That said, it's very much important to pick the countries or regions or segments or vertical you really want to dominate and win. The amount of capital, amount of focus, amount of bandwidth, mental capacity you need to, conquer the world is just too much for a startup to do. I think most startups should not focus on more than one country. If they do focus on one country, there's probably something wrong with the business model.
Okay. Thank you, Jaspreet. Sajid, you mentioned something about Udaan in other regions. Were you referring to Udaan in other neighboring countries or just Udaan within the Indian subregions?
So I was telling like when we have started Flipkart in India, it was called Amazon of India. So like that way I was using Udaan of, let's say, Indonesia. Other regions. Okay. So our business is a commerce business, Manoj, and we are all the capability, let's say supply chain, logistics, financing, collection, all those capabilities are very, very local problem. So and it's like very unique to that geography and the region. Though the idea is global, but the execution is very, very local. With that, definitely India has a lots of depth. Like I said, most of the consumption happens through B2B channel in this country, through those small kirana shop, retail shop. So I think I don't see, we are just, it's a, we are a fraction of the percent of overall trade, though the number is in $1 billion, but it's a way to go. I think next 5-6 years, I think lots of things that we have to do, expand our network, build capability like supply chain, bring more and more businesses in the network, and that's a very big number what we are working on. So I don't see we are going out of India anytime soon. So
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Sujit. Mr. Sinha, any comments on how do these companies become global leaders? What policies are being put to encourage that, if any, or you want them to be?
Yeah, Manoj, I think they are all global leaders, and they're doing extraordinarily well. And of course, as you know, our government is working on a set of policies to enable global listings. So they will be able to list on any of the markets that have, appropriate regulatory oversight, etc. So we are enabling that because we recognize that capital is available around the world, and we have great startups that can benefit from that capital. At the same time, we are trying to make it possible for our companies, and I heard Ajay talk about his desire to list in India, to make it easy to list in India, make it seamless to list in India. And there again, there are a number of things we're doing with AIFs and so on that will allow growth in our private markets so that capital is available in all stages of our investment cycle. I will say one very important thing, which is that we have to be, as the Honorable Prime Minister says, Atmanirbhar in all ways, in all areas. And one area where we need to be Atmanirbhar on is in terms of having at-risk capital to drive, the next 50, 60, 100 unicorns that we need. So to date, if you look at our unicorns, 80 or 90% of their funding, if not more, has come through foreign capital. And we need to mobilize domestic capital, be Atmanirbhar there as well, so that the next 50, 100 unicorns, at least half of their financing is coming from India as well. So it's extremely important, I think, that we mobilize domestic capital, we get more high net worth investors, more institutions to participate in startup financing. And that's really the work that we've been doing in my committee. And that's what we're engaging with the government on to see what more can be done to enable more financing from India to go into our startups.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. I'll ask one quick question, then we'll come to the concluding remarks. So this is for the 3 entrepreneurs online. How much success of your company do you attribute to sheer luck or market conditions, timing, or your unique value proposition? So start with Ajay, then Jasprit, then Sujit. Ajay, you have to unmute.
I said life is always a mix of everything, and there is no one thing that makes things work. So it is doing it's doing a lot of right things, and it is not doing a number of things which makes things successful. I can share with you because we started in the year 2000 when there was nothing which was called electronic. And when we started, we actually used to go to the bank, and we used to even carry around floppy disks. So it is from that time that we started enabling digital payments. And today, if you see, everything happens on the phone. So, and as a business, one has to evolve. One has to keep doing new things every 4 or 5 years. And it takes a mix of different things. It takes the right set of technologies. It takes the right set of people. It takes the right set of relationships. It takes the right set of environmental factors, things which the governments do. Like, as far as digital payments is concerned, there have been two very, I would say, two very significant events which have changed the course of things. One was the demonetization thing that happened in India. Because of demonetization, there was a shift towards digital, which was, if you see recently, because of this pandemic, there has been a more, I would say, basic change in the way people transact. So as a business, one needs to take advantage and mold your I would say solutions and thinking as the environment changes. And from a digital and digital payments perspective, all these things around, whether it was the GST, whether it was demonetization, whether it was this whole pandemic thing, it has helped and got people to transact and do things more digitally. So
Thank
purely
you.
coming from that perspective, I think it's been helpful, and various things in the environment have also helped us reach where we are today.
Okay, let's hear a more concise answer from Jaspreet. Was it luck? Was it your value proposition? Was it the market, timing, conditions?
I think all of those. I think luck definitely plays a major role. But as Ajay said, you have to consistently refine your positioning. Dhruva had to redo the business model thrice. And as a sort of cultural analogy I use in California, which is like the surfer mindset. Right? The surfer has to be disciplined to be ready. He has to time the waves. You can't really recreate the waves. You time the wave, but nobody watches a surfer paddling under the water to be ready for the right wave to come to ride the wave, right? So that's what we have to do. Be disciplined to be ready and wait for the right wave to come.
Beautiful analogy. Sujit, short answer.
Yeah, I think all of the above. We are lucky from the team point of view. Like we have a fantastic team as a lot. From team and timing point of view, and I'd say also like how you are executing, how big you are thinking, how the team is assimilating. So how your investors are thinking, or you are on the same page. So lots of factor, or how you are able to address the product market fit. So you have started with the one version, how your ability to change fast. So all those things, like culture is a big enabler of the success. I think all those things are small things, but we cannot finger point, hey, this is the one thing which has contributed the most. From that point, I think everything, it has to come together.
Great. Thank you. My next question is to all of you. We'll start with Mr. Sinha. What should the government do as a policymaker to prime this engine more? I know, Mr. Sinha, you mentioned Niti Aayog, you mentioned Startup India. When Honorable PM was in Silicon Valley a few years ago, he had this Make in India campaign. He was really encouraging more and more startups to set up India from US NRIs. So since then, Mr. Sinha, I know you have been on venture capital, you have been a McKinsey consultant, you have been doing strategy for big companies here, IBM and Cisco, to name a few. And then you opened up Omidyar Network. So in your opinion, what other things can the government do in terms of policy making to prime this engine, even so you have 10 times more unicorns in the next few years?
So as I said earlier, Manoj, we've done a terrific job in really moving the ball forward. The problem, of course, is that we are competing against 2 or 3 countries like the US and China that are also on top of their game. So it's a continuous race, and we have to keep getting better and better every day. And so that's what makes it fun and interesting. And as I said, one of the big areas for us to focus on is mobilizing domestic capital. There is plenty of global capital available, but we've got to mobilize domestic capital, not only because we want a more balanced mix between foreign and domestic, but also because domestic investors understand India's problems well. And as I often say, India's entrepreneurs should be solving the problems of not Times Square in New York, or Union Square in San Francisco, or Piccadilly Circus in London. They should be solving the problems of Jhanda Chowk in Hazaribagh, which is where I come from. So हमें झंडा चौक के जो समस्याएं हैं उनका हमको समाधान करना है. So we need to focus in on Indian problems, and for that we need domestic capital. We need investors who understand that. So I think that's a very important factor. The second thing that we need to do, and again, I know I'm speaking to the converted here, preaching to the converted, but we've got to make our IITs absolutely on par with MIT, Stanford, Tsinghua, Cambridge, Oxford. And the reason for it is very simple. All of the great innovations come from science and technology. They come from us as engineers, and because of the breakthrough and the innovations that we come up with. So we've got to really make our IITs as good as the best in the world, if not better. And there, I'll just throw one fact at you, which is that if you look at the budget of MIT, MIT's budget is $3 billion a year. Tsinghua's budget is $1 billion a year. And IIT Delhi's budget is about $60 to $70 million a year. So we can't compete unless we are able to mobilize capital and resources to our top technical institutions and really provide them the support that they need to be at the cutting edge of science and technology. It's when we do that that we will have a steady stream of really high quality scientific innovations and inventions coming out of our labs. Look at what's happened with the vaccine situation, right? It's the University of Oxford. 2 of the vaccines have come out of Boston, which is, of course, the life sciences hub of the universe right now. But that's because of Harvard Medical School. It's because of MIT. It's because of these incredible academic institutions that we have been able to make so much progress on the vaccines. So we really need to strengthen our scientific institutions. And then third, we have to really celebrate a culture of risk-taking in India. It's the entrepreneurs that are driving our economy forward. It's companies represented by the great panelists we have today that are really driving our economy, creating jobs and creating wealth for everyone. So we have to celebrate our entrepreneurs. We have to celebrate our risk takers. We've got to pour in more resources into science and technology, and we've got to mobilize domestic capital. So that's what I would suggest we need to do to keep up with the US and China.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. So let me hear from the owners. What can the government do to help your businesses scale even among us? What policies do you see missing? Let's start with Ajay, since we have Mr. Sinha listening. You're on mute.
I have. So I want to take on, rather move the conversation which Mr. Sinha mentioned. So, capital comes once you have revenue. I think what India and as a set of people we need to solve for is we need to make sure that businesses make money. Because once you start making money, that's when the cycle begins. And I think we, as a set of people, we've become too very cost focused. We are always looking at making something cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. I think what gets the system going is increased revenue. Because revenue is going to get you margin, revenue is going to get you profit, that profit is going to go back to capital. That cycle has to come in somewhere. And I think if we as a set of people can get this, I would say, virtuous cycle going, which is instead of an undue focus on costs or reduction, we should have a focus on increasing. And I think if we get that cycle right, I think we will all come out of it. And I think the government can really help in that, because I think if this messaging goes that, business is there to make money, because if you make money, you'll employ more people. And that cycle should happen. And I think Mr. Sinha mentioned this point that risk taking should be celebrated. I think the fact that businesses should make money should also be a positive thing, rather than the fact that it's viewed that, okay, there must be something that is not happening right here because it's a business. So I think we need to get the societal thing right also in this, that revenue should go up and businesses should, if you look at all large corporations, you might call them innovative, but I don't know whether it's a profitable company that is innovative or an innovative company that is profitable. So I don't know what the cycle is, but there is something which is different. Revenues grow, profits grow, margins grow. We need to get that cycle.
Have a policy suggestion that you're making? What should the government do? What new policies?
So I'm not looking at a particular policy per se, but I think we need to see, because I think the government has put in all the various things that need to be done, and they are working on making things easier and simpler. But I think if we get the messaging right to the people in general, the society in general, that, these businesses are there for being a business.
Okay. Let's hear from Jaspreet. Jaspreet, even though you're in the US, what's your experience in India? What new policies need to come?
First of all, great perspective by Mr. Jayant. I think a lot of perspective, at least I was missing from a context of what he shared. So I'm not very well educated to answer this question. I think in general, this is a comparative point. As a sort of Delaware-based company, which has sort of operated in the past in India as well, the ease of doing business definitely hits you hard, right? That the simple things about taxation, there were instances when we were chased by local tax authorities. There were instances we were, in general, just amount of state tax, local tax, documentation, legal matters. The ease of doing businesses do sort of creep up. So for a lot of people to think about domiciling somewhere else or some of those issues do still come up. So the ease of doing business is sort of my sort of big ask. But you know what? That said, I don't understand the bigger perspective to even make that ask. That would be sort of my naive
Industry. So we'll spare you from the full answer. Sujit, you've been through two excellent companies. Any policies? Policies are there, but are you seeing the execution of those policies happening?
Yeah. So yeah, from last, if you'll see, lots of progress has happened in last 12 to 13 years of my startup journey. Especially when this government came 6 years back, 6.5 years back, I think. Lots of digitization as an initiative, internet infrastructure penetration, GST implementation, demonetization. I think lots of policy transparency has happened. But as an entrepreneur, again, I must say that we want more simplification, more infrastructure, more transparency. Like as our Prime Minister has said that minimum government, maximum governance. I think that has to be seen on ground. I think in a startup there are lots of initiative has happened from the government. I think those things has to be put in the perspective. There are startups. You can say that you can bucketize them like initial startup, list startup, sector-wise, all those things like logistic policy. I think government is taking lots of initiative. Some of them need more clarity, but I think I have seen like complete change and different kind of approach, very progressive. At least in every sector, if you see the government is touching and bringing version 1, version 2, version 3, like UPI, who would have thought like 6-7 years back, something that kind of infrastructure can be created. I think I'm very appreciative of the government, how they are doing it. But as a like greedy person, greedy entrepreneur, we are asking more and more.
Thank you, Sajid. Be greedy. So next 4 minutes, let me have Mr. Jayant Sinha give concluding remarks. You heard all the entrepreneurs. You shared some of the excellent policies. They think execution is being done. I was in India last week myself. Amazing road system, highway system. So, Mr. Sinha, any other concluding comments?
Well, I want to thank the entrepreneurs for giving their honest feedback. Manoj, again, for everything that you've been doing for IIT startups. And it's good for entrepreneurs to want more. Dil mange more, and dil should mange more. And we are here to serve you. We are here to give you what you all need, what you all want. And like I said, it's a never-ending race, right? Because we are not competing with Bangladesh, and we are not competing with Vietnam, and we are not competing with Nigeria. We are competing with Germany. We are competing with the US. We are competing with China. We are competing with Japan. We're competing with the leading economies of the world, and we have to beat them. There's no two ways about it. And we have the talent. We have the resources. Now, we increasingly have the policies to beat them. And that's the aspiration we should set for ourselves, because whenever we've had a good shot at it, good set of opportunities as individuals, as Indians, we have shown that we can do it, and we must do it. And I'll sort of add to it my own personal view as somebody who came back to India after many years in the US and then went from the private sector to the public service side. Which is not only that we have to innovate and compete and beat the best in the world, we also have to give back to our society. We have to ensure that all of us who are extraordinarily privileged in terms of the opportunities we've got at the IITs, the peer group that we've gotten, the access to opportunities and resources that we got through the IIT system, is something that is available to all Indians. And how do we all individually give back? One, of course, is to build great companies, which is what you're doing, which is fantastic. But think about, more broadly what you can do. And that doesn't mean, you go into politics or anything. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is find initiatives, whether it's through NGOs, whether it's through your own personal time, find ways to engage with societies, find ways in which you can help more rural areas. And really, let's all of us benefit. Let's all of us grow, as the Honorable Prime Minister says, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. So that's what we should aim for through our companies and through all of our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sinha. Thank you, Mr. Sinha. With that, I really thank the IIT Summit to give us the opportunity, and all of you panelists to come together. For some of you, just read 6 a.m. in California, for Mr. Sinha to take this 1 hour of your time and share with us your vision. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Alok, for the moderator or super moderator. Alok, you have any closing?
Thank you very much. It has been a privilege to be part of the Pan IIT movement and this particular summit. And I think the way we put the summit together and the kind of response we've gotten is just indicative of all that we are capable of. So आपके नंबर 4 से नंबर 3 में आते देर नहीं लगेगी सर. Thank you, Manoj.
बहुत अच्छा भाई, सबको नमस्ते, धन्यवाद, goodbye.
Thank you.